Sarah Colvin, and joining me live on the phone, I welcome Cape and Island State Senator Dan Wolf. Senator Wolf, good morning.
Good morning, Sarah.
How are you today?
What a spectacular June, huh, so
Oh,
far.
really has been wonderful. I've ridden many, many miles on my bicycle, and that makes me happy. So keep up the good work, Mother Nature. That's what I say.
I'm in agreement, and I too have spent much time on a bicycle and just marveling at the beauty of where we live. Pretty amazing place.
Without a doubt, it's the best way to see the Cape, in my opinion. So, Dan, let's talk about a couple of things. First, I want to talk a little bit about Uber, and this, to me, it's a fascinating conversation because obviously we've got taxi services that have been in place for a long time, lots of regulations, lots of money the drivers have to spend, and here we have Uber and Lyft coming in and really making some money, making some progress. So, tell me a little bit about a bill that was filed that will kind of help out the Uber and the Lyft drivers.
Well, what's really interesting, Sarah, is I kind of put this in a very personal context to me because, as you know, I operate a commercial scheduled airline, which has certain parameters and requirements that we go through to carry passengers for hire. And, you know, I sort of look at it, my God, what would happen if all of a sudden people who own private airplanes decided to start charging people and flying them around? I mean, first of all, the FAA wouldn't allow it. And second of all, the qualifications both of the people doing it and the vehicles that they're traveling in are completely different. So, you know, I come at it from the context of we've got generations of making sure that when a ride for hire happens, the consumer is protected. And a lot of the bill here is to put it in that context, is to say, okay, we understand this is a disruptive technology, it's an innovative technology, a lot of people love it. But on the other hand, we have to make sure that the standards for carry, the quality of the equipment, the maintenance standards, the insurance requirements, the caliber and quality of the driver, the safety of the occupant, all of that stuff is guaranteed as we open the door for this. So it's an exciting opportunity from my perspective, but one that we've really got to get right.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about what this bill entails, what some of those measures are.
Well, the bill as it comes out requires that now the Senate bill, the House already did a bill. The Senate bill does not require fingerprinting and that kind of background check, that depth of background check for the drivers. It does require that Uber do a background check on them and keep a record of it. I actually think right now there's pretty good protection to the consumer because before you get in a car with Uber, you have a picture of the person that's driving, you have their phone number, and there is a database showing who you're getting in the car with. So there is some pretty good protection. This would go a layer deeper and make sure that certain background checks are done. The Senate bill also has insurance requirements to make sure that the passenger and those who might be hit by somebody driving for Uber are adequately protected. The bill does not address maintenance standards and requirements. I think there'll probably be a floor amendment when we take the bill up that puts a maintenance requirement in that would be at least commensurate with what other commercial carry vehicles have to make sure that the public is protected. So that's sort of the bill as it exists. What it doesn't do, Sarah, and I as the chair of Labor and Workforce Development in the State House for the last 6 years, regret the fact that it doesn't do anything to address the situation of the drivers themselves. And at some point, we're going to have to go back and do that.
What do you mean by that?
Well, right now, the average Uber driver across the country is making around $19 an hour. So nobody's really thinking about the type of workplace protection that we offer workers: minimum wage, workman's comp, unemployment insurance, all of the other worker protections that have been, time and a half, overtime, all of those worker protections that have built into the workforce over the last 100 years. By Massachusetts law, these drivers really are technically employees of Uber, even though Uber claims that they're independent contractors. They're really not, according to Massachusetts law. And that's because Massachusetts law, over the past 20 years or so, has broadened the definition of employee so that we don't see people getting exploited at low-wage, long-hour jobs without any of those workplace protections. So I would sort of ask the question to you or to anybody out there, right now, if the average wage is $19 an hour, what happens when the number of drivers out there doubles, which will happen because in an unregulated market, more and more people are going out there and becoming Uber drivers. And when the wage drops to $6 or $7 or $8 an hour, which is below our state minimum wage, and people are literally chained to their car just trying to make enough to make the car payments, that's a very different scenario for the Uber driver. And that will happen unless we take affirmative action over the next number of years. That's not in this bill, but I think it is something we have to keep our eye on.
Certainly, as the company grows, I think I do know a couple of folks who drive for Uber, but it's strictly on a part-time basis. It's kind of to make some additional money in the evenings and on the weekends. But I think, as you said, certainly as we see the company grow and see the opportunities arise, we'll definitely have to think about being an employee as opposed to being a quote-unquote independent contractor.
Well, Sarah, there's sort of the myth out there, and I love the way companies do this. They're very successful at creating a myth. So the myth is the average Uber driver is somebody who's making plenty of income, happy life, and is just going out to earn a few bucks in the morning. That's simply not the case. The average Uber driver is somebody who can't make enough income at their regular job and is doing this to try to make ends meet. And it is not a pretty picture. I mean, we're again, because wages have been flat over the last 30 years, what we're doing is we're forcing people into the dark corners of the economy just to try to put bread on the table for their family, pay for health care, and have a roof over their head. So I think we're going to have to keep an eye on this because as the economic crisis among lower and middle income earners, as that continues to grow worse and worse, people are going to look for workarounds so that they can put bread on the table for their family. And Uber is one of those technologies that allows you to do that. But I think we're going to have some public policy discussions about how that works.
Without a doubt, and I'm sure that any discussion about about Uber, especially that will encourage its growth, will not be without some pushback from the taxi industry, and I'm sure we've seen that already.
Well, the taxi industry is in an interesting place because they paid in a lot of cases, especially in metro areas like Boston, they paid a lot for the so-called medallion. And the medallions are just a way of regulating how many drivers and how many cabs are out there so that you can make a living doing it. It was a market solution to try to prevent the bottom from falling out of wages and have a lot of poor people sitting around in cars waiting to take a fare. One would argue that the price of a taxi in Boston is too expensive, which I think it is compared to other cities, and very often the service isn't great. So we've got to find that happy median between the right number of vehicles out there so that the consumer is satisfied, but also not flooding the market with vehicles so that it becomes really wage slave jobs. And that's going to be the interesting policy decision over the next number of years.
Without a doubt. Senator, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about renewable energy, another bill that is looking to increase the renewable energy base, and it seems like we're bringing offshore wind back into the conversation. So tell me a little bit about renewable energy and this bill looking to kind of continue to increase our state stock of that.
Well, specifically on the offshore wind piece, as you know, the Bureau of Offshore Energy Management, BOEM, which is a federal agency, has put out to bid the area south of Martha's Vineyard and east of Rhode Island, where they claim, and they're accurate, that thousands and thousands of potential megawatts of electrical energy are sitting unharvested. So there is a bidding process. That's been an open bidding process. There have been some interested parties that have bid for it. Our bill would create a market for up to 2,000 megawatts of offshore wind from that area, and the House bill would create a market for about 1,200 megawatts. So ours is a little bit more aggressive. We have a goal by 2030 to get to 38% of our electricity in Massachusetts, 38% to be from renewable, and this will take a big step as far as getting us there. If we only do 1,200, which is in the House version, it'll be very difficult to get to that 38% by the year 2030. So that's why we're as aggressive as we are in our bill.
Sure, and what makes this this area, south of Martha's Vineyard, west of Rhode Island, a little more appealing than, say, Nantucket Sound? I mean, I'm thinking about the nearly 2-decade-long battle for Cape Wind. Certainly, that is, we're not going to see that anytime in the not-too-distant future. So what makes us think that this particular area might be a little bit more favorably received by the community?
Well, when Cape Wind put their proposal on the floor back in like 2001, and hard to believe it's been 15 years, the technology didn't exist then for deep water offshore wind. So this is further away from shore. It's more unobstructed. The wind will be much more harvestable, if you will. It's a better potential just because it's away from land further. And then, the aesthetic reasons that people objected to Cape Wind about not having it mar the lands, the oceanscape, and not in the perception of some be an eyesore and be in the way of the Cape and Islands. I will say that also when Cape Wind was first put on the table, the maximum that a single tower, a single wind turbine could produce was about 3.5 megawatts. Now the biggest is up near 8 megawatts. So the technology has increased tremendously, both relative to the output of the windmills and also the ability to put them in deeper water. So I think it does make sense. It'll be more industrial size. It'll scale better, and it'll get us closer to our renewable goals. So it does make a lot of sense to put it out there further away, but to really be aggressive about promoting and developing it.
Sure. So, Dan, really the clock is ticking on the end of the formal session coming up in just about a month from now. So tell me, are you expecting any traction on this bill before that session ends?
Well, indeed, the clock is ticking, and because the Republican convention is the third week, and we won't be in session that week, and the Democratic convention in Philadelphia is the fourth week, and I'm actually a delegate. I'm going to be going down to the Democratic convention. We really only have 3 weeks left, and we're going to be working weekends, the last 2 weekends in July, to try to make up for that. But I suspect we'll get an energy bill done because we have to. I mean, we really need to get that done to keep the renewables going and to meet some of our portfolio requirements and goals. So I suspect we will get an energy bill done. I suspect we will get some kind of TNC, that's the Uber bill. Transportation Network Companies is what the bill is about, and a few other bills. But I do have remorse, given that this is my last session. I'm not running for re-election. That this is a wait and hurry up scheme that goes on every session in the legislature, where we just haven't aggressively dealt with bills through the entire 2-year session. We find ourselves staring at the deadline, and act like victims when really we should have acted a lot sooner on a lot of these bills. So. We will get stuff done. We won't get as much done as I had hoped we would get done, but there will be people working late into the night and on weekends between now and the end of July when the session ends to get a lot of these bills done.
Fantastic. Well, Senator, I thank you so much, as always, for joining us here on Barnstable This Morning, and we will check in with you again in a couple of weeks. Until then, enjoy the great weather, and we'll talk with you soon.
Thanks. I'll see you on the bike trail.
Absolutely. All right. Bye-bye. You too.
Bye.
Cape and Island State Senator Dan Wolf joining us as he does every other Tuesday. Going to head to our fishing report, and then we'll talk with our Director of Public Relations.